your men can have love for the truckie. Beautiful minds, but we love getting ugly. Risk takers with a clover, man, we love getting lucky. You run, we chase fire, I love when it ducks me. Tones go off, house watch, read the address out. 1075, get up off the magic couch. 500 gallons prepared for the baddest drought. Who else you want on the way when disaster's out? Can't even get a little bit rattled when you enter with exit apparel. Mayday, member down, they'll drag you. You won't get this from every Tom, Dick, and Harold, but here's a view from the top floor with Mickey Farrell.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of A View from the Top Floor. Today's show is going to be a great show. My friend Bob Pressler retired at a rescue company 3 in the city of New York, as well as an active firefighter at Christiana, Delaware. Bob has been on the show in the past. He was on episode 52. So if you haven't checked that out, be sure you go back and check out that episode as well. This time we met for coffee, an unseasonably cold May morning. We talked about standards. We talked about basics and how the basics is the foundation of your career, as well as we dove into data and how data is setting up the future of the fire service for failure in the sense where we are broad stroking strategy and tactics from coast to coast. Firefighting is localized. We talk about all these things during our conversation. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did sitting down with Bob, catching up and talking shop. And so no further ado, my good friend, Bob Pressler.
All right, Bob, thanks for coming. I want to start with a quote from the last show you were on. Don't teach strategy and tactics because I'm not in your fire. And I think that probably with social media and the internet, YouTube, everyone's at everyone else's fire these days. There's a time to learn, a time to critique, but as far as teaching the strategy and tactics, I'm not sure there's success in that.
So the bigger problem is we're looking at a snippet of time. Could be 30 seconds, could be 10 seconds, could be a minute. We have no idea of what started that whole process, what kind of training they have, what the department looks like. You know, sometimes it's a big department, so in that case we go, oh, we know all about those guys. But without the basics, none of it's going to work. The last probably 2 weeks, there's been an entire string again, and I get a kick out of Facebook and Instagram. Once you watch something, you're going to see 10 more of them, whatever their metrics are for setting it up. There's been a tremendous amount of forcing doors again with the forks the wrong way. It's the prop lets you do it wrong because it's pushing against the spring. So now we've created this whole culture again of it doesn't matter which way the forks go on the Haugen. That's true on a wooden door, wooden jam, one lock. But once you get into the good doors, it 100% matters. So unless you got those basic skills down, it doesn't really matter where you are. Pretty interesting. My son, in the Bronx now, and a lot on EMS runs, but are getting real doors, 5 locks, angle iron, metal door, metal frame, and they don't force like any prop. So if you don't have the basics of forceful entry down and know what the door is giving you, what the door is not giving you, you're not going to be successful. I don't care how many times you force the blue door. That's gone into everything we do now. The fire service has gotten into gimmicks. What's the newest gimmick? The hen nozzle. I don't know if it's good. I don't know if it's bad. I have no desire to try it. The Vindicator nozzle. The 7/8 tip. There's another great one, right? That was given to us by someone that the year before, his entire message was gallons of water a second. Now it doesn't matter. So it's all gimmicks, but it all comes down to the basics of getting a line in position, getting the door open, venting when we need it. That's what makes the difference on a fireground. So we can teach all the strategy and tactics we want, but if you can't perform the task, it's not going to matter.
The forceful entry against any manufacturer, just talking about the concept of a forceful entry problem. You develop a strategy or you develop a systematic method of shock, gap, and then the next sentences or the next paragraph in that conversation, you have to be able to get from 1 through 4 to 10. And there's some truth to that for some doors, but I think if you have the basics, you're not going beyond 4. There's no reason to go beyond 4 if you have the basics down.
99 out of 100 times, 100% correct.
The fundamentals work. It'll get you through it 99%.
Yep.
Yes, you need to be able to get from 4 to 10 for that 1%, but
if you can't get to 4,
if you can't get to 4, then that's ultimate failure.
And even shocking the door. I mean, that's an ongoing, discussion. Some people say, well, what it's going to do is crease the door. But when it creases the door, if I crease the door in 2 inches from the jamb, does it make the part that's against the door tighter because I deflected the door this way? Did I close up my gap? Again, we practice on these doors that let us succeed kind of irregardless of how we do it. Yeah.
Some guys, again, going back to that systematic method, we're training the young firemen to shock, gap, set, force, and that's all they know.
And they don't know why. It's just what they were taught, right? So we found and like I said, you don't want to pick on the manufacturer, but the door that we use now, we don't let them gap in. So they have to go up and get the forks in. So they learn that skill. So that's the tough door. That's the door that gap and shock and did nothing for you. Now you have a tight door. What are you going to do? So we've had some success with doing that. We had a guy build us a door. Crazy. Almost too hard. You can't teach on it because there's nothing to gain. You can gap, you can shock it. The door isn't moving. So it's a real finesse door. So we start them on the door that we have. We let them learn how to do it without gapping. And then we move to that door. And the other door is tough. It's a real tough door.
You know, I find with the gapping with the door props, we're losing the concept that it's a forceful entry team. Two individuals are forcing this door. Yes, we get doors by ourselves. I mean, that's just how it works. But we can't lose sight that we're a team. And those props are setting us up for failure, but we're forgetting that we have to strike the fire.
And they also gap 6 times to the wood cracks. That's not a real door. You're either going to get the door when you first gap it, or you're going to have to get the forks in. So, that's another step. If they still need to gap it, they gap it once. Whatever you get, you get. Period. And those are teaching for the harder door, for the door that you get 1 out of every 25, 1 out of every 50. Right in Christiana, I've always said, I haven't found a tough door yet in our local. The hardest door we ever had was in a house with an extended jamb. There's no place for the forks to go behind. It just kept riding and riding. It turned out it was the way they built an extra wall on the inside, but there was no place for the forks of the Halligan to turn. So we finally had to embed it into the wood to get enough to pop the door. But
also the prop, you don't gain that knowledge of listening and feeling, hitting that jam. What that sounds like, we're hitting boom, boom, clink, clink, clink. Now you're hearing that, you're into the jam.
Teaching people to listen, right? There's so much to hear. When you're on the floor above and you're losing your visibility, how can you tell you're not hitting on center anymore? Well, hitting out here on the ad sounds different than hitting in line with the shaft. But they have to learn to listen, and they don't. Like you said, is it hitting the jam? Is it sliding? No idea. So there's all those little things, but trying to teach those before they understand the very basics is next to impossible.
Again, going back to the basics, keeping it a standard set form of basics, but then wrapping it all up with the details. You have to listen. You have to be able to see. When you can see, pay attention, be able to feel the move. I always say the tool should be an extension of your body. And with that, it should be natural to come up into your hand, into the jam, and you should be able to feel that. Steer the tool in. Feel that roadblock when you hit the jam. Again, those are the things that the door props don't necessarily teach us. And then when you're going on the runs, now it's about letting your people work. If you have an officer that doesn't let your men force the door, you'll never learn. Let them take the door. Deal with the security issue.
Yep.
But if you have a reason to take the door, emergency or a fire, take the door. How do you feel about the floor above? I'm a big component of if I'm on the floor above and it's a good job, I'm going to the bunny tool. I'm not gonna mess around too long with the conventional enforcement. Again, I just feel like we're in the bullseye, the Watch Street 5 from the mind,
Yep. And what have we been told? How do we do the floor above? So that becomes, to me, that's the first thing. How were you taught to force a door when you couldn't see? There's not a lot of different ways. I've always taught you put both your hands down near the fork, get it where you want. I put my hand behind the edge. I swing one-handed. I can clap in the dark. So it gets me started into that rhythm. If you have the rabbit tool, the bunny tool, and it's that bad, the conditions, absolutely. Why would you struggle? But the problem is without ever letting people do some of it or learning to bring their hands together, what happens the day the tool fails, right? Now we're back to square one. So we do it with the hood over the face, just to get them to feel it, bringing their hands together. Is it effective as me swinging 2 hands? Absolutely not. But it might be enough to get that bite on that door upstairs to get the forks in.
I just did a drill with the Probies at the Rock, and it was just that. It was about introducing stress into the environment. Lights out conditions. They could not control their breathing. And they're trying to swing and can't see. It keeps missing. I can hear the breathing getting more in depth, more labored. Now, eventually they got to the door. It took way too long. In reality, it wouldn't have worked. It was a drill. I let them work through it. Eventually they got it. And the critique afterwards when we were talking, I showed them the clap technique. And I told them, I said, just take your hands. And I showed them. I took the Halligan, I took the striking tool, I took that. And I was doing it, and I was talking to him like this. Not making contact with him.
But so many people have never even thought of doing that. They want you to double tap. Well, what happens when the fork starts to go around the door, if you're lucky, this moves, right? The deeper we go in, the more the head moves. Now your double tap is hitting hip, so it's much easier to start like that. It's just they have to practice that in the basement of the firehouse. So we always talked about doing hinges. How do you get the top hinge? You're in the back of a commercial building, you got hinges, doors fortified. You got to get the hinges out. Well, the first one, the forks go up, and now you have to swing this way. Who's ever shown that? How effective is a guy swinging an axe up to try to shear the hinge out? No one's done it. Bottom one is easy. Middle one depends how tall the guy striking is. You might be able to reach up and hit it. But the top one is you have to hit under.
Yeah. Again, this is all part of the details within the standard of the basics. People may think that hitting it that way or the clapping method, that's on number 8 of our trial of getting this door. No, that's just the details within that form. If we can figure all that out, we don't have to go to 10 minutes.
If you can have it there, right? If you can say, this is my next option. What do I do now? This isn't working. Why isn't it working? What would be the next thing to go to if this isn't working? But a lot of people, they have 1, 2, 3. Let's find another door to go in because they have nothing else.
Now, let me ask you a question. Do you think the fire service in general has lost grip on the local identity by chasing national narratives through data and tactics that are not localized for your response area?
I think what has happened is it's really the internet. I can go on there today. I saw a video from Stockton, California today. So, am I going to use what Stockton does? I have the ability to look at something and say, well, that might work for me, that might not. I wouldn't do that, I would do that. But the problem is everybody wants the next neat thing. We've lost our identity to be a fireman where you are. That's what I think has happened. I watch something on the internet, now I want to do that. I want to try this. I want to go up on a roof. I want to chop holes. Whatever it is, we're watching too much fire porn, and it's just getting us away from what we do. Are there good things out there? Yeah, but most times they're picking on somebody. Like we said, we're watching 15, 20 seconds of a video, and they're saying, oh, that worked great. This worked good. Oh, I'm going to do that next time. Well, if you've never practiced it, you're not going to have the ability to do it anyway. You think you watch a video, and now it makes you an expert at doing that? So I think the internet is to blame for that. Everybody wants to do what everybody else is doing, whether it's good for them or not. And I think that's where the root of the problem is. It's instant gratification. Oh.
Yeah. We've always had West Coast tactics, East Coast tactics. And it was never really debated what was right or wrong. It's just the way it was. But now, you gelled together to one American fire service, which is good and bad in that. But I don't think we can take data as far as where you find people in buildings, time of day, all these things from the West Coast, and compare that to the East Coast in the sense of, okay, you have a ghetto, you have an urban department where time of day doesn't mean anything. No real data is taken compared to what would be a bedroom community right outside.
Sure.
Or a bedroom community right outside LA versus what goes on in Los Angeles. I just think that broad stroke between East and West and everything in between, we can't make a nationalized strategy and tactics for firefighting and for searching and for everything in between.
No, some of the best example of that would be LA, you go down to Watts, it's a lot of single-story houses. And they'll have, from the time the brake was pulled, the crews were inside, search was done, they found a victim in 90 seconds. Well, now you go to where you work, the top floor of an old law tenement, it takes you 90 seconds to get to the fire floor, right? So your data is originally going to be more just because of the building. So until you quantify more of the reasons, it's almost some of the UL tests. One of the things I always said about a UL test, they'd light a fire and they'd say, okay, window A just failed. And this is what the fire did. 100%. Well, what if the fire had failed window B first? Now everything you just showed us was going to happen went out the window because the fire didn't play by your rules. So the data has to have more than time. There has to be something in it that you can use to say, okay, this is what happened. So UL did VES studies. One-story ranch house, when you took the window, I think they said it was 100 seconds was what they came up with, that the fire in the living room would come down the hall and get to your bedroom. In a 2-story house, they used 200 seconds. And I might have the numbers wrong. It's been a while. But nowhere in that did we talk about what the walls were covered with. Were they paneled? Were they knotty pine? We had a fire down in Christiana 3 weeks ago. Small fire in the garage, good smoke conditions throughout. They get up to the second floor, double door at the end of the hallway, like a laundry closet. They open it up, there's a spiral staircase to the attic. The attic is a full length of the house, 30-foot long bedroom. The entire walls, ceiling, everything is knotty pine. What would happen when the fire got up there? We said there'd be fire coming out the two little windows, attic windows, about 30 feet in each direction. So if you look at that, what data that someone else used for when the fire was going to do something did they get out of that? What's the flame spread in that room, right? So the data is always selective. It's usually used to prove what you want. You're going to give me the data that says stretching a Minuteman is quicker than stretching a flat load. Where?
Well, I think it's become a bridge to the lack of experience that's out there. You gain your own data by going to fires and observing what's happening in real time. When you don't go to fires, you rely on data. You fall back to that default method of saying, this is what the numbers say on the national level, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to develop our tactics with this data, rather than going to fires and saying, this worked and this didn't work. Let's talk about this.
Yeah, you should use your data. You shouldn't be using other people's to justify what you did. So years ago, we're teaching a RIT class, and a gentleman stands up. He goes, so what we did when RIT became a big thing is we looked at all our fires where people got in trouble, right? If we went back 25 years, how did guys get in trouble? New York City actually did this. But he goes, so we found, I'm from New England, wood frame city, poor city, low staffing. Almost every event we had was a water problem. We were getting overrun by fire. We were on the floor above. We didn't have a line. So our RIT team started stretching a line to bring it to the front of the building with enough hose to cover the rest of the building. He says, and once we started doing that, that dropped our incidences of guys getting in trouble by more than half. And he said, I've never seen that written down as part of a RIT, that they should know where to get a line if needed. And for them, they just had them stretch a line, and it stayed there. You needed another line. You couldn't take that one. You had to get your own, That's using the data of that department to justify what they decided to do as their tactics or part of their strategies. And I think now, it goes back to the internet, I can go on every day to someone on there asking, what do you guys do for this? What do you guys do for that? Yeah, and especially if they're not the same social makeup of your department. Your building stock isn't the same. There's so many variables that no one puts into it. You're going to get in trouble using other people's stuff. And I think that's happening already, but no one wants to put that out there. No one wants to say, well, I used the stuff you told me. Boy, it didn't work. Well, that's part of the game. It may not work for you. Years ago, I reviewed an article for a guy that went on. He's still out there teaching, and he was upset that I questioned what he wrote. And it's like, well, no, because I'm worried about the guy from here, the guy from nowhere, Nebraska, reading it and misinterpreting or not understanding what you wrote. And he was highly offended by it. But, you have to make sure that when someone reads what you write or listens to what you say, they understand that, this worked for me in New York City. May not work as well here, but the idea behind it is the same.
It's always been that, I guess, that not hatred, but that, that's New York City. That works for them, doesn't work for us. But now with social media, we're not talking about the flip side of that. Well, that works in this department, that's a world area, that doesn't work in New York City. But now because of social media, everyone's reading everyone's information. Now the lines are very much blurred.
And they won't do the other 90 seconds to think whether it's good for them or not. I saw it online, it's got to be good. That's the problem, is no one's doing the homework. I laugh. I watch that Jim Cramer all the time, and one of the things he talks about in buying stocks is you have to do the homework. Just because he says this is good, maybe not for you. Maybe your timeline's different. Maybe your risk tolerance is different. Well, it's the same with this kind of stuff. You saw it on YouTube. You don't know if that's good for you. How many people do they have on the rig, right? It's all that stuff, but it's doing the homework for that one event that you just watched to see if it's good for you too.
It all comes back to what I always say, but you have to understand the exercise.
Yes.
Every move, every pivot in the fireground, what the next reaction is going to be on that fireground.
And to realize that your level might not be what you need for this particular event. I keep laughing. There's a couple of people on the internet right now that, they're showing us how they train their probies. And I'm all for it, but until they're in that position, either on the nozzle or the first guy to go in that window, you don't know how they're going to perform. Because now all of a sudden it's not make-believe anymore. The go, no-go, there's so much of that. It's just in your head. You have the tools, but are you going to apply them when it's time? It's kind of interesting, what we take for granted. Oh, we've done it 15 times in training. Okay.
Real life fireground stress, and that builds a false training narrative or misguided skill set almost where, when you get to that fire in real life, it's very much different. It's a stress level. Even just getting the tones going off saying working fire, that's a different stress level. It's, all right, guys, ready? We're going to do this scenario. Everyone ready? All right, here we go. Like, just hear the tones saying working fire. The stress level
changes everything. Sure.
Everything. It changes even just getting dressed.
Yep.
If you can't perform that when you're stressed, again, coming back gear, the way you set your gear up, getting off the rig, the way you get your tools, just it all comes down to having a systematic.
And it's the repetition of doing it enough times. Right? How many runs is your company going on a year? And if you treat everyone the same way, then you're going to do that without thinking. Right? If you're doing it 100 times a year, you're going to change this, change that, reach for that. If you're doing it 500 times a year, you found what's the best for you and the easiest for you. You do it more than that, then it just becomes what you do.
I'm so fortunate, and that's one of my favorite things about work. Guys, the way they carry themselves into position on every run. It could be out 3 windows, or it could be a smoke. It could be a class 3 or alarm ringing. They conduct themselves the same.
Yep, it's what they do.
It's just, and every tool is an extension of their body. For me, it's poetry, emotion, and to step back and be able to watch that makes me so proud.
Yep, that's because they've been trained to that level that's how they perform.
Let me ask you this: in your experience, what's the most overlooked element in the first 2 truck?
So it's going to sound odd, but it's the dedication to search. If you look across the country, and again, we can talk our end of the world, the East Coast, the West Coast, in between. I always thought, and probably because it was the way I was taught, that New York City did it the right way. If you look at private houses, what's everybody on the first truck doing? Trying to get in the search, right? Private houses are the place where we can probably make the biggest impact on civilian lives because, open staircase, if they're upstairs in the bedrooms, middle of the night. But how many places they're emptying the ladder bed? First 2 trucks throwing all the ground ladders. How many places 2 guys or all 4 are going to the roof? Now, I always thought LA was a pretty interesting place until I watched the video from a helicopter, early morning fire, places going merrily, and the first 2 truck pulls up and all 4 guys go to the roof. And it's like, I don't understand, right? So to me, that's the thing that we're there for. If we have 4 people on a first 2 truck, 4 people should be searching the interior of a private house. I don't care if I burn the roof off. It's never been a priority for me, right? But I want the searches to get done. And depending on where you are in the country, that may get done and it may not. I know departments that the first 2 truck officer used to go do the seaside report. So where's your crew? What are they doing? Who's supervising them on the inside of that fire building? So to me, that's probably the single biggest thing is the dedication to get searches done.
I wholeheartedly agree with you, as well as on this even more basic level is locating the seat of the fire. So we're throwing ladders, we're cutting roofs. We have to search. That gets overlooked. That step is getting overlooked. I don't think we're teaching that in the basic academies. It's like first thing we're doing is finding that seat of the fire.
And to me, that's the truck officer's job, right? Door gets popped. He's going to go. How far is he going to go? We don't know. Who goes in first? That's always been a question when, we teach different places. Who's the first one in the door? Well, I let my ironsman go first. Well, what if he's fast and your can man is slow? When you get to where you want to go, where's your ironsman? No idea. So I've always tried to be the first one in the door. My job is not searching for victims. I'm finding the fire. Once I find the fire, identify the fire area, I can get my other 2 guys searching. Or I can get my can up to hold the fire, and I can start the search. But, you tell people your first priority is not life, then it's fire. Once we find a fire, we're good. Because now we can decide how much time we have and get the engine in position. All part of that basic search, right? Going above the fire, when can you go? How do you explain that to someone, right? What do you use for your standard of when I can go above the fire? Is the line coming? Is the fire unchecked? Can I close the door? Reports of people upstairs. And again, I'm talking just all private houses, not even bigger buildings. So you get people to understand forceful entry. You get them to understand the search. Then to try to orchestrate it to get all the bases covered is a whole other step. How many officers don't like being alone? They're not comfortable being uncomfortable. You know, I had a fire one day, sent my irons man upstairs. Later on, we're talking about the fire, and he says, yeah, you know, there was still fire when I came down. And I'm going to myself, definitely not enough time for him to have searched the bedrooms upstairs if there was still fire when he came back down. And, you know, I asked this officer to check in with him. Is he just uncomfortable, or did he do a real fast search? Inefficient, you know, and so that's something that you also have to now attend to. Now I have an issue with this one fireman. I don't know where he stands. You know, did he just think he did a good enough search? So all part of that scenario, and then holding people accountable for the jobs that you hope that they were doing. And if they didn't do them, why? What was the issue? Because a lot of people aren't comfortable being uncomfortable. They don't like being alone.
Going back to the first one in the door, that's a good conversation. As a fireman, I used to jump over the door. Now on the other side of it, as the officer, I tell those guys, give me 1 second. Just give me 1 second. I go in, I do a 180, I put the tick up, see what way the velocity of the smoke's coming, and then boom, that's where I'm going. Because you said the officer fights the fire, and that's exactly what my goal was. Once I get that, I can say, all right, Ken, you come with me, I urge you to go the other way.
Yep.
But it takes from slowing down. This goes back to the word, quote unquote, aggressive, right? To me, the word aggressive, when you do want to speak about aggression, not necessarily just doing your job, which I love, it's slowing down, it's aggressiveness, it's tempo, finding that balance. Where you can say, brothers, hold on 1 second. Boom. All right, good. You're going left, I'm going right. Things work really smooth when we just slow down and communicate.
And the thing is, you're not slowing down for a minute and a half.
No,
it's a 3 second. It's a 3 second looking decision. But like you said, when you were a fireman, you try to get over the officer. And so now you go back. Why? Was he not moving to your liking? Was he the guy that was willing to let you go? You know, I mean, there's so much that gets even built into that kind of culture. But now, once you've told your guys what you're doing and why you're doing it, I'm sure they're fine with it.
I think it comes down to not plus just wanting to get in there.
Yep.
It's a different element when you are the guy feeding the obstacle, but now the mission's inside the door. That's where I want to be. So once we get past that obstacle, my mission now has begun, and I just want to get the job done. Now, as a supervisor on the fire floor, that's different now. Now I want to know exactly every piece of the puzzle.
Yep.
I'm not going to wing it. I'm not going to figure it out as I'm searching around. I'm going to know exactly what I'm doing in the moment before I make that commitment. I guess it's maybe just maturity that kind of sets that apart.
Well, and they've given you another tool. You have a thermal imager. Yeah. So split second look at the thermal imaging, and you kind of get answers to some of the things that before you didn't get to, you got to them. Fire's over my head, you know. I have to retreat now. So that's part of it, too. Like you said, being a supervisor is a lot different. I was just always more comfortable being the guy in front. Because if something goes wrong, they're between me and the door. I can hurt everybody and get them back out, right? So it goes back to finding the fire. Once I find the fire, I'm kind of comfortable. You know, a lot of things can go wrong still, but if I can get the engine moving, I know we're going to be in good shape. We can get our searches done.
Getting water on that fire, that saves more steps.
Oh, absolutely.
But the floor above, I think that now when you go to the floor above as an officer, that shifts a little bit. Now my position, I feel, is to let my guys go a bit. And I'm going to be the individual between my point of entry, which is now the egress point. I want to be able to maintain that, almost like a midfielder. My guy's there, my second means is the fire escape here, my door's here. I'm kind of supervising.
So do you go to the door first on the floor above and assign them to where you want them to go and then get to the other side of that? So now you're back towards the door, right? So you're still getting in the door first, getting a quick idea, quick layout. All right, irons, down the hall, get those bedrooms, can finish the living room, and now I'm going to retreat back to where my door is, right? So, because it almost sounds like now you're letting them go, which defeats the purpose of knowing where they are. So you're still doing almost the same thing, but you're taking a different position once you've let them go, right? You've taken your look. Now you're going to get back to where the door is. So it's kind of interesting because, you know, who's finding the fire escape window then? Have they looked at that, right?
That's always my main, even as a fireman, I was always trained. As I'm searching and finding a window of full experience, but have the experience to be doing that under the stress level and thinking clearly to say, let me find that window, let me confirm that, let me dial it back, let me close this door. You know, all those little things like isolation on the floor above and the fire. So important. I've seen firemen now not so much thinking about isolation. That simple as closing the door, how much time that can save you within the apartment.
Because it all goes back to have they been told some of these things, right? You know, we expect, I teach at FDTN, you know that, you know, and we get people through there that you think they're coming from a pretty good place and they've got some time on, not that they don't know anything, but they only know what they know. They've never stepped outside that box. You know, you tell them something like that, oh, a door. Well, what's the difference between a hollow core door and a solid wood door? Does it buy much time? Well, it's tremendous. I have a picture a guy gave me from Michigan. It was the opposite side of the room that was on fire. One was a solid wood door. The other one was hollow core. The hollow core door, the inside sheathing was gone already. It was ready to fail. The other one, they could have sanded it down, hung it back up, and gone on. It's a huge difference between the doors. So now the next question is, can you tell the difference in the doors? Well, yeah, when you slam a hollow core door, it usually bounces back and hits you in the head. Where the wood one, you got to push to get it closed. It's definitely a difference, but who's told people to feel that difference? You know, I mean, it's the details. It keeps getting back to the details. But if they've never been told to isolate, there's never a need to tell them the difference in the weight of the doors, if that makes sense, right? I mean, it's just all part of that puzzle.
And then going back to what you were saying about private dwelling or anything, our sure bet, or our most, yes, look, hey, the fire, or the fire, that saves life, but you see it all the time, just as you stated. It's 4 guys going to the roof, no one's searching the building. We got to get the roof open. I said, I don't care if we burn the roof off. More lives are saved by getting in those windows and searching the most occupied areas, wherever that may be. That's where we're going to make the biggest impact on the fire.
Absolutely. I have a video at home. I used to use it when I taught. 2-in-1 response with an ambulance, a couple guys. So the first 2 engine gets there, lock gate, they hop the gate, they throw the line over. The truck gets there, 2 guys go to the roof, 2 guys start working on the window bars. House is covered in window bars, right? So the one guy's spending all his time working on the window bars to the fire room. Well, who's going to come out of that? No one. Make a long story short, they knock down the fire. About 30 seconds goes by. We got a victim. The nozzle man is the one that kicked the front door open, put the fire out. After he knocked down the fire, he passed the line to the probie and went and searched and found a victim and pulled him out, and the guy lived. So they justified all their actions because it was successful. Now, if any of the 4 guys that were doing the stuff on the outside of the first 2 truck had gone in, the guy would have gotten out 45, 60 seconds earlier. So, you know, when I use it, I say, so it's a success story. But what if the guy had died? Would they have turned around and say, what could we have done different? But good luck, you know, justified what we did. So it became kind of a push that people have to be aware of. And like you said, it's all the engine officer. Is he a good engine officer, a bad engine officer? Does he want to be good? Does he understand? Does the chief understand?
That's what you just said. The chief understands. The chief's got to know, all right, I got Bob making this push. His internal clock's ticking. He goes, clock's ticking too long. Bob, how you doing? Give me 30 seconds, I got it, you know? But you have to trust the guys. You have to know who your people are and what their abilities are.
Yep, and you have to stand by your decisions. I had a fire down below, middle of the day, and outside-in fire, which we were getting tons of. Started on the rear deck, went up the vinyl siding into the attic. I got fire showing through the roof. I can already start to see the trusses, right? So over the front door is one of those big half-moon windows. So in most private houses, that means it's an open foyer over the stairs. Having hydrant problems. They're in there. They got the first floor knocked down. I'm looking. I pull them out. And they all come out all pissed off, you know, which is normal. And within a minute, the roof collapses in that staircase. I didn't have a second line to protect them. I didn't have a water source. So, you know, you have to have the ability to take information, process it at your speed, which may not be my speed or someone else's speed, and make good decisions, right? They were doing what we've done on a shitload of fires. Get the line, knock down the first floor, go out the back, put water up the back, try to slow it down. But without a hydrant, without a second line, we were going to lose.
It's about intuition and instinct and trusting it. I go back to a fire with the Carpluck Riley fire with Mickey Conboy on the roof. He just had intuition to say, let's go. And he went. And seconds later, it really was.
Yep.
You know, it's just like having that intuition. You have to trust it. That's the decision-making process. That it's not necessarily logically speaking, this is a black and white scenario.
Nope.
It's just, it's time to go. And by going to them enough, you start to pick that up and understand it. You can trust it.
Yeah, and who knows what it is? A little tremble in your feet, you know? And we had a fire in Montgomery years ago. We're up in the attic of a farmhouse. And guy throws his hook, and he hits the ridgepole. And the whole building kind of goes, it's like, do you feel that? Yeah, what do you think that was? I don't know, hit it again. Well, that was the stupidest thing we could have done, right? So he does this time, and it's the building. You know, this building's had enough fire damage. It's 100 and something years old. it wants to fall down. And we're still in there playing around, so it was time for us to go. But I always kid, here's all this experience up in his attic, and we all felt it, but it was like, do that again. Well, no, dopey, get out of the attic.
But going back to what we said with that question about the thing that we're mentioning today in the fire round, and you said the windows and flow path. This is something that I gave a lot of thought to in the recent years, is that the fire industry, or what we're learning in the fire academy, we're setting young firemen up in the fear of the flow path. And the flow path to me is a disruption within a tactical movement. Like, you dictate the fire, you make those actions, you make the energy in that building work for you. We're not doing that anymore because they're telling kids flow paths back. Do not take windows, do not take windows, do not take windows. It's just a matter of time before we find a fireman who gave a mayday, or maybe didn't give a mayday, but we find him dead inside a building right by a window that he was scared to take because he was told, do not take windows to disrupt the flow path. It goes both ways, from the outside in and from the inside out. It's calculated, but we still have to do it. We have to understand the flow path. If you can manipulate it or control it for our benefit, you'll win. You have to do that. And you have to understand water on the fire is very important as well, but isolation points, and all these things that we're not necessarily teaching. I think that's what trickles down to why the windows are a problem.
We gave them the yellow book, Ventilation for Dummies. We gave them one chapter of it. Don't take windows. Well, yeah, most of the time, but there's times where we should. And that's what we haven't continued. I think part of the problem is, how long you been a fireman? How long you been in the fire service?
30 years.
And you're still trying to learn something new, look at something else. And I think that's a big problem. We're getting people that weren't in the fire service to start with. We have to push them out into the field. We can give them a little bit of information, but if they're not the ones that want to get more, they always said about you get yourself in a mayday situation. You're not going to invent anything in that moment that you haven't thought about, tried, heard, listened. Nothing's going to come to mind. Hey, I should go try this. And that's the problem. Guys get in, and their highest level of competent training is rookie school. They don't go to a place that drills. They don't go outside their organization to try to learn more. So they become stagnant. This is what I learned. And you're not going to be successful in this job. And if you're a guy that took the career path to studying and didn't go to fires, every time you look at a fire, you're like, what are they doing? Why is no one calling me? Give me a CAN report. Got to be one of the stupidest things you can hear on the radio. Leave me alone, I'm busy, right? Sitting in the car down the street, listening to radio traffic to try to run a fire. Still can't understand that, right? I stand on the front lawn. Now, if it gets big, I retreat, I get aboard. We got all that. But 2 engines, 2 trucks working at a house fire, who's watching the fire building itself? No one. They're all busy. They have jobs to do. So that's my job, right? I'm the incident commander. I watch the building for you. Like you said, Bob's making a push. It hasn't gotten better yet. How you doing in there? Give us 30 seconds. All right, that's 45. It still don't look good. I have to make a decision. But if I'm in the car, you tell me give me 30 seconds, what do? I turn the egg timer over. You right? No, it's halfway through. How you doing now? I can't see. I don't know what you're doing. There's a place to be in the car, but I don't understand at the beginning of an operation. You should be watching the fire building.
This job it's an art form. You look at that building like it's a blank canvas, and you get to paint the picture. When in the car, you're not taking in everything that's going on.
I'm taking your word for it.
Yeah. You're not taking in the smell of the smoke. You're not taking in the way it truly looks. You're not taking in the sounds. You're not hearing the guys that aren't on the radio that are talking to one another. Those are all the details that allow you to paint the picture.
Has any of the smoke turned to steam? Is it light now instead of all dark? Is it raising from someplace else? I mean, the fire service never learned its lesson. The Mary Pang fire in Seattle, 4 firemen killed in the line of duty, where the guy sat in the car down the street, never knew it was a multi-level building. I mean, again, there's certain things that my whole career I'll never understand, and that's one of them. And yet, go online. There's a guy. You got to be in the car. Windows rolled up, doors locked. I don't know. It baffles me.
There's too much room for mistakes.
Yep.
That's like coaching a basketball game from your car. essentially, you're not part of the energy.
Yeah.
Energy.
Yeah.
That's what makes this job so addictive, is the energy within it. And when you isolate yourself from the energy, you're not playing the game.
No,
You can build
you're on a different level.
Yeah.
You're
You
on
can
a
build
different
it.
level. Yeah, all interesting stuff, but it's truly being a student of the game. And there's not a lot of new students. There's internet students that can tell you that they've seen 4 ways to do something yesterday, but they've never had the opportunity to try it. So, it floats around in the back of their mind, and if they never had the skill set for those basics, they're going to want to try whatever they just saw. However stupid it is, that's what they saw last. So it's a fight. It's definitely a fight.
If you're removing a victim from a window, are you trying to position that victim feet first or head first?
So I've always answered that question with, did you get to the window before the ladder? That's my first question, right? Because if I'm on the floor above and it's real crappy in here, I'm going to try to get the head on the windowsill or close. Hopefully it's a little bit better outside than it is in here, right? Then if I have help, I can get them out onto the ladder. They're getting most of the weight now, and we follow with the feet. Some people say it's easy to put the feet up first, but to me, it's all when you found the victim and how you got to the window. We've had this discussion about how do I move a victim in the fire area. I'm not repositioning anybody in the fire area. Whatever I can grab onto, I'm grabbing and trying to move them. So that really is going to dictate how they end up at the window. But like I said, if I'm there before the ladder, I'm going to get their head out the window. To me, it's got to be better out there than it is in here. I don't know if that answers your question 100%.
That's a great way of putting it. Feet first or taking a feet. So I looked at it as like, what's the conditions in that room? Can we close the door, isolate? Conditions get better as we take that window. The conditions get better where you can actually communicate. Are they conscious, unconscious? These are all factors, right? So, but the problem is, even if they are conscious, you can't communicate with them.
No.
They're way over the curve. They're ready to jump, essentially. So you can calm them down. And then it comes down to the sides. Are you dealing with a child, an infant? I don't think it's one of those things you can just broad stroke and say, this is the way we do it, this is the standard. But again, when you look on the internet, they show you all these different ways, but they don't tell you the details when you do certain things, why you don't do certain things, and how you can't.
Yeah, what led up to this, right? Yeah, if it's a kid, you can pass them out feet first, why not? Right? But you're not doing that with a 280-pound adult. I mean, there's so many variables. And again, you said that the problem is the internet. Here's how we do it every time. Good for you. I don't. I have too many variables that are always floating through my mind on what I have to worry about to make blanket statements.
So I've recently realized that I have a lot of young firemen, like probies, watching the podcast, which is great. Can you give me a piece of advice, and then whatever your favorite or most important or most influential reading material outside the fire service has helped you get to where you are?
Outside the fire service, probably very little for that. I don't read the leadership books. I've looked at a couple. I don't draw the same parallels that everybody else does between like the military and us. I understand there are some parallels. I still like Norman's book. I still think Norman's book is probably the best all-around book for what we do. I don't delve too far into non-fire department stuff. If it is, it's all fiction. For the probies, you know what? It's what we started the conversation with. It's the basics. It's moving and flowing a line without losing control of it. It's learning how to force a door. People don't like those answers because it's too simple. There's no fluff to it. There's nothing new. No, it's the same shit I've been doing for 50 years. It still works. That's the thing. I've looked to find a better way to do stuff, or will this work? Will that work? I haven't got there yet.
I think in the end, if we look at this, it is only firefighting. It's not rocket science.
It's not.
There's a tactical advantage and an edge that are going to be doing. But it's still firefighting.
But you need the foundation. You can't build a house without a foundation. You're never going to be a really good fireman. And, I kind of laugh. Longevity is what's probably contributed to my name, because I'm still doing this. I started in New York City in 1979. Just look at the firemen that were there back then. I was probably at best an average fireman compared to these guys. And it's just the longevity of doing it and still being in the game that's given me the ability to talk about it as much. That and the fact that I learned a lot of stuff outside of New York City. Right, guys from New York City know New York City stuff. Makes them real good firemen. But you talk to a guy that worked in Harlem and the Bronx his whole career, doesn't know much about private dwellings. Guy that worked in Staten Island doesn't know much about top floor of H's. And I think that's what helped me a lot is I have experience from a lot of places. Been a fireman in 6 or 7 different places over the course of my career. And I'm still looking for more secrets. So I think that's really what's helped me be able to do what I'm doing here. It's 50 years of experience, you know.
What's it like living through your son now?
It's pretty cool. I'm happy for him. He just got off probation. He's doing the fight. Should he study or should he try to go to SOC? I mean, eventually he'd like to follow what I did. So I'm enjoying it. He's having a good time. I wish he'd get his good nozzle fire.
It'll come. It only goes out in the end.
Oh, yeah. All good. I have no complaints.
All right, Bob. Well, I appreciate your time.
Not a problem. Hopefully it comes out good.